He is a great person. I've known him for so long. For the past 16 months, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
With the momentum all going his rival's way, a coup for Donald Trump's campaign, perhaps the biggest since his attempted assassination. Robert Kennedy, son of the assassinated Bobby, nephew of the assassinated President, JFK.
I know that they are looking down right now, and they are very, very proud of Bobby.
The heir to America's most famous Democrat dynasty, now throwing in his lot with a Republican.
I am announcing tonight that upon my election, I will establish a new independent presidential commission on assassination attempts.
Don't you want a president who's going to get us out of the wars and who's going to rebuild the middle class in this country?
Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
He's an environmental lawyer whose polling numbers peaked at 20%. Popular with young voters, appalled at the choice between Biden and Trump, and at one stage describing the latter as unhinged.
Listen, I'm not a fan of President Trump's. I'm running against him. I intend to beat him in this election.
But when Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden on the Democrat ticket, RFK was done for, squeezed out of the race. So desperate that he even sounded her out for a job. His slice of the vote collapsed to around 4%, though he blamed media bias towards America's two-party system.
In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless, systematic censorship and media control.
Last month, Kennedy's son filmed him talking to Mr. Trump. It was the day after the assassination attempt, and it suggested that Trump may have offered him a job first.
And I think it'll be so good for you and so big for you. And we're going to win. We're going to win.
Mr. Trump has offered Kennedy a role in healthcare, tackling America's obesity epidemic. The big unknown is how many of his voters Trump can now hoover up.
It was the right decision for Kennedy from a pragmatic standpoint, is that he can join forces with Trump, fight against the Democrats who are clearly corrupt, and then he can actually get in there and have a seat at the table.
Donald Trump's going to listen to him, okay? And since this is a platform that matters, I think, for our country, to have our children not have the same chronic diseases outcomes we have right now, this is important.
Here's a few things I believe. Middle-class families, like the one I grew up in.
This is Kamala Harris's response, a new TV ad aimed at blue-collar workers.
Where everyone has a chance to...
Airing in the 7 key battleground states where picking off Kennedy voters could make all the difference.
God bless you and God bless America.
Yesterday, Kennedy's sister described his support for Donald Trump as disgusting. It's a sad ending for a man now accused of betraying his family's party, but also a man saddled with unattainable expectation from birth.
Well, earlier I spoke to Larry Sabato, Professor of Politics at the University of Virginia and Director of the Center for Politics Crystal Ball Election Predictor website. He also won an Emmy for a documentary about the Kennedys. I asked him what difference RFK Jr.'s pivot towards Trump will make to the campaign.
It's already had one practical effect. It cut Kamala Harris off right after the end of her convention. Normally, the nominee gets a couple of days, sometimes a week, to continue whatever momentum they've generated at the convention. And to be honest, I think that's the major effect he will have. He doesn't have votes to transfer. That's what people are not focusing on. He has been dropping like a rock ever since Kamala Harris entered the race. The reason for his being was that we had a choice. We Americans had a choice between two unpopular old white guys. One network poll here, a CBS poll, had Kennedy just a few days ago at 2%. You're not going to transfer votes at that level. Most of them vote for the couch. That is, they don't vote.
And in an election that could be decided by just a few thousand votes in a handful of swing states, Could that not be important?
Yes, and I think we might also be hit by an asteroid that our scientists have not been able to see in advance. Everything's possible. This could be another 2000, another Bush-Gore race decided by 537 votes in one state, Florida. It's always possible that will happen. It's happened once in American history. So, is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? No.
Which campaign do you think will be happier tonight, the Trump campaign or the Harris campaign, now that RFK Jr. has gone over to Trump?
The odd thing is they're both happy, and maybe we need more events like that. The Democrats think that this is another layer of weird on top of Trump and J.D. Vance, the vice presidential candidate, because they both have weird aspects. The Republicans believe that at least in a few of the 7 states that are actually competitive, 43 states are off the board. They're not even vaguely competitive. But 2 or 3 of those states, maybe if it's within a few thousand votes, somehow RFK Jr. will be able to transfer enough for Trump to win them.
There's a lot of disillusionment in American politics and amongst American voters, isn't there, as well? And RFK Jr. spoke to some of those people. What do you think they will be thinking if their guy who was calling Trump unhinged has now hinged himself to Trump?
I think that's a very good point. I think they will conclude correctly that this is a very unusual guy who, like most politicians, is hypocritical, can switch on a dime. His family's furious with him. They all have endorsed Harris, just as they endorsed Biden. The Kennedys were a 60s phenomenon.
We've now had both conventions, Democrats and the Republicans, so it's a good time to really assess where we are at. How do you see this race right now?
Right now, Kamala Harris is a point or two ahead. Well, she ought to be. She's had a very happy month. Trump's problem, as always, is he's stale.
And you do a lot of crystal ball gazing in your profession.
I do.
So looking into your crystal ball, how do you see this shaping up in November? Who's going to win?
I would say if you're looking at them right now, if the election were held today, I think Harris would manage to eke it out, but not by very much. Trump has a history of coming back when it really matters. 90% of the time, he's completely undisciplined. He will say and do anything, and his own campaign managers are screaming behind stage because he doesn't follow directions. But when it really matters, he does. And that might make the difference in the end.
Larry Sabato, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.